All right, welcome back, everybody. My name is Jack Paisley, and I am the sports casual. And we're going to be talking some Monday Night Football. We had a two-game doubleheader tonight. The first game was going to be the Vikings versus the Bears, and the Vikings came out with a 30-12 win at home. And then the second game was Atlanta 15 and the Raiders 9. So, if I'm honest, it was they're two of not the most entertaining football games I've ever watched personally. For the Vikings, they are the one team out of all four of these that I would argue are actually a good team and in the basically the hunt to be a playoff team. And they play the Bears, and to be honest, it was an ass whooping. I thought the Vikings offense looked good. I thought Sam Darnold for the most part played pretty well. He had I believe one just dumb interception, which is pretty standard for Sam. He can make some of the best plays you'll ever see. That's why he was third overall pick. Every now and then he gets a little careless with the football. But all in all, the Vikings really should just be happy with this. I thought it was a pretty complete performance all in all. And then for the Bears, like they are one of the most talented on paper rosters in the NFL this year, and they just haven't gotten it. They made a lot of errors up at the front office in terms of I thought that before this year they should have fired Matt Eberflus and just started from scratch with Caleb Williams. Um, I know that a lot of people have been talking that it's the Bears pattern that they draft this rookie quarterback and then fire the coach the next year, and they just keep having this cycle of talented quarterbacks that end up just getting screwed by their head coach, which it all comes back towards the organization. Um, and then for the Atlanta Raiders game, again, this was a very bad game. 15-9 by the Falcons getting the win, and I was listening to the commentary for both of these games, and it was just the commentators absolutely shredding these teams. Like they were defending the Raiders the whole time and just basically crapping all over the Falcons, about how they're playing scared, how they don't trust Kirk Cousins, and all this. And I thought that was an interesting take because the Raiders are terrible. Like they are, I believe, currently number two overall in the draft. Currently, if it ended today, and Atlanta is not. So I thought that was an interesting take. I do see what they were saying. They were talking about Atlanta being scared to put the ball in Kirk Cousins' hands, and that kind of led me to thinking about what teams in the NFL waste talent more than anybody else. And I think we see three of those teams that actually played tonight. Like let's kind of break it down a little bit. Let's start with it. Let's start with the Raiders. Like right now, you are wasting a arguable first ballot Hall of Famer in Max Crosby. Outside of him, I would argue the only other talent that would be a star on any team would be Brock Bowers, who's a rookie. I think those two are the only two building blocks I would start around. I think that the biggest issue with the Raiders is they just don't develop talent very well. They don't draft it particularly well overall. Um, of these teams, I would say they aren't the one that waste talent the most. They just don't get it. Um, and then let's look at the Bears now. So the Bears, a lot of their talent came in off-season signings. So you got DJ Moore, who came over from Carolina, was a certified number one overall receiver. Love Justin Fields. Now clearly it's not sounding like him and Caleb Williams are getting along in any sense of the word. Not sure whether it's just their personalities, if it's a target issue like on a football side. I'm not really sure what the issue is there, but he is not playing well. Caleb is not playing well. Caleb is the number one overall quarterback, supposed to be this generational talent, and he's looked like the only quarterbacks that you can argue I would draft like lower than Caleb Williams is Michael Penix, who we've not seen play at all. If they keep playing like this, you could argue that you're going to see him soon. And then the only other one would be J.J. McCarthy, and he tore his knee up before the season. So the only guy that I would take Caleb Williams over are just not on the field, and that there's a very good possibility that one of those two would be better. Like they were supposed to be these great prospects before. That hasn't changed. They just haven't played. That I I know it's super early and it's not entirely on his fault, but on his shoulders. But I think we have to start thinking that maybe Caleb Williams was a little too much hype. Like he's just not playing smart. Was watching him and he's just running around and then gets drilled. That I would be amazed if he gets through the season without some kind of injury and then he's just throwing balls up. I just don't think that Caleb Williams has played anywhere near his draft stock, and you can't argue it's a lack of talent. Yeah, their O line is not great. That is the one area that I think is a fair criticism for that roster is their O line is not great. Their receiver room has a first ballot Hall of Famer in Keenan Allen, a supposed number one talent in DJ Moore, and then Roma Donze, who is one of the top receivers coming out of last year's draft. And then DeAndre Swift is not a scrub running back. He's not a bell cow all star back, but he's a capable running back. And then I believe it's Cole Kmet is their tight end, who is a capable tight end. That you're seeing a lot of these other rookie quarterbacks and other quarterbacks operate with a lot less talent than Caleb has around him. So at some point, you got to think like yes, it's coaching, but it's also got some of that responsibility is on Caleb. Like he's just not playing well. He's not seeing the field. He's getting hit a lot. He's making dumb throws. He missed a wide open touchdown tonight that the Bears are one of the best wastes of talent in the league right now, and that's not even touching their defense. And then for Atlanta just gets all the hype in terms of drafting players. Like Kyle Pitts was supposed to be this generational tight end extraordinaire that everybody comes out and everybody buys into him on a fantasy level every year, and he's just never lived up to the hype. I think he's in his fourth year or third year, so he's been in the league for a little bit now, and you're just not even seeing him in the offense. That there was that one to start. Drake London has been a solid receiver. That one, he would be a starter on 99 out of 100 teams. Unless it's maybe like the Minnesota Vikings or something like that. But outside of that, he's a very productive receiver. Bijan Robinson was supposed to be this generational Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry type running back, and he had a solid game tonight. I believe he broke 100 yards for the first time in a while. But he was supposed to be this like Adrian Peterson, like crazy amazing generational type running back, and he's been pretty okay. Like I would say he's a average at best running back in the NFL right now, even though he's supposed to be this crazy talent. That um, out of all these, I would argue that the Bears have wasted the talent the most, but none of them have been great. So wasn't the best night of football in terms of Monday Night Football. I expected a little better showing out of basically every team other than the Vikings, and yeah, then it kind of leads you into the coaching carousel thing that for the Bears, like obviously they are in the need of a coach. I was listening to the commentary for the game, and they were singing Ben Johnson's praises out of Detroit, and rightfully so. Excellent offensive coach, has his team playing outstanding right now. But if you're going to a dysfunctional organization like Chicago or the Raiders or any of these like long-term problem organizations, like it kind of got me thinking that the Bears need a culture setter. They don't need obviously it'd be nice to have a Ben Johnson kind, and maybe he'll be this like in the long term. But I think that ownership group, which is notoriously cheap in terms of ownership, which is all relative. Obviously, they're still multi-billionaires, so don't feel too bad for them. But they've got to push all their chips into the middle of the table and go after Mike Vrabel. I mean, they already fumbled the whole Bill Belichick thing with him going to Carolina. That I think they need to bring in Mike Vrabel and just write him basically a blank check and say, "Build me a winning culture," which I think anybody that is in that coaching world would agree Mike Vrabel can do, especially with the roster that is on this talent. He did a lot more with a lot less when he was in Tennessee. And Then in terms of the Raiders, I think that Antonio Pierce is going to stay for more than this next year, or at least until the end of next year. I think that their ownership group, including now Tom Brady, is sick of paying quote or coaches that are no longer there, whether that's John Gruden, Josh McDaniels, or whoever else is on their payroll from a coaching standpoint that's not there anymore. So I think in terms of that, Antonio Pierce is going to have one more year. I don't know if that's the best choice, but the only thing that I was thinking watching that Atlanta game was the Raiders are playing way harder than Atlanta. So I think Atlanta might actually be getting second thoughts about hiring the coach that they hired, because so far their team is underperformed, at least based off of preseason hype, and it just looked like they were not ready to play. They were not flying around. They just didn't look great as a whole team, in my opinion. So I'm wondering if there's some second thoughts in that CEO group and ownership group about if they made the right choice. And I think that's a fair criticism because um, it's just not a very well run team currently. They're not playing hard. They're not overly creative in scheme, and their quarterback's playing bad. And they created a offseason drama story by drafting a rookie quarterback right after they paid 100 whatever it was 150 million to an aging quarterback that tore his Achilles. So just something to think about on whether these organizations are happy in the direction they went to. And one other thing I kind of wanted to touch on was I remember this week is the Showdown in the golfing world, which is a weird match style format between Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler representing the PGA versus Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau representing Live Golf. Which, if you're not familiar, the golf world has been split for several years now, with the whole Live Golf tour coming out of Saudi Arabia, with them as the funders, and it is kind of I think it has definitely separated the golf world in a negative way. Like if you look at all the numbers, it is basically dropped viewership across the board. And I'm actually a live golf fan. Like I understand that a lot of these guys they're essentially contract workers and they're being paid an astronomical amount of money just to sign with the organization, let alone win, compared to the PGA. And the PGA was kind of like the old man's monopoly where, you know, you have to win in order to make any money. That a lot of those pros were actually flying all over the world and they weren't even being paid because they were not making the cut. Which I mean, it is a merit based, system at that rate, but you're also not treating your product in the best way. And the second Live Golf came around, all of a sudden the PGA is like, oh, we found all of this money, and now we can finally pay our players. Which it was just they finally had to. So I think Live Golf has done some good in the golf world, but it has also fractured it to where the viewership is down. And I think this is the kind of the peace flag between the two, which it's been the PGA has been the anti, like the negative Nancy coming into these negotiations where they're like, once these players go, we don't want them. We're too good for them. We'll be better off without them, and that's not been proven true because clearly Bryson has won, I believe, two of the last four majors. So clearly, some of those best players in the world are on Live Golf, whether they like to admit it or not. And I think this is a huge opportunity to create a giant recurring event, similar to like the Ryder Cup or to the lesser degree the President's Cup. I'd actually rather watch this than the President's Cup, just based off of the history and the U.S. dominating it. But if this event goes well and generates a lot of viewership, I think that they should make a Ryder Cup style, uh, basically tournament between the best players in Live and the best players in uh, the PGA Tour, and then you form this one like super tournament, which can kind of unify golf a little bit, and it'll help both parties because it'll reinvigorate the golf world on the PGA side while also driving people towards the Live fans. So I'm actually super excited about this. If I'm honest, I would be betting on Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler I think Scotty's just playing too well right now, and then Rory can be the hottest golfer in the world or a hot train wreck. But there's different match play elements that I think in terms of how it's going to line up, unless Bryson is on just an absolute heater, which he's also capable of doing. I think that it's basically going to be Scotty versus Bryson, and I would trust Scotty on a day to day basis more than I trust Bryson or Brooks. I think Brooks isn't going to be the best player in there. He's a great competitor, so he might actually play well in the match play aspect. But um, you're just it's a really fun idea for the golfing world. I'm really glad it came together, and I'm really excited to watch it. And yeah, we'll see if maybe this is kind of the olive branch that both sides need to come back together, at least in some capacity. And yeah, so look forward to that. And yeah, it was a lackluster day of Monday Night Football, in my opinion, unless you are a Minnesota Vikings fan. But thank you for joining me. My name is Jack Paisley, and I am the Sports Casual.